All right, so we are answering this question before us, which says, for the graph of y is equal to f of x is equal to negative 2 cos 3x plus pi on 2 plus 1, and this is our domain, find, the first thing we need to do is find f of pi on 4. So what that means, if I can zoom in here, is that we're going to be substituting in pi on 4. So I'm just going to rewrite this. I have negative 2 cos of 3, and instead of writing x into that spot right there, I'm going to put pi on 4 plus pi on 2, then I'm going to plus 1 to that. So now that I've done that, let's now clean that up. So I've got 2 cos, this is going to be 3 pi on 4 plus, now instead of writing this as pi on 2, I'll multiply the bottom by 2 to make it 4. I multiply the top by 2, but make it 2. So 2 pi on 4, so now I have common denominators, plus 1, and I go like that, negative 2 cos. Now this right here is going to become 5 pi on 4 plus 1. Now, hopefully what you're able to do here is look at this right here and say, hey, this is cos of 5 pi on 4. Well, my reference angle there is pi on 4. And I know that when I have cos of pi on 4, my answer is going to be the square root of 2 on 2. And this is telling me that I'm in my third quadrant. So my answer is going to be negative the square root of 2 on 2. Then I'm going to plus a 1 to it. If you're looking at that and say, my goodness, that is way too difficult, I can't do that in my head. Remember, the other option you've got here is to draw yourself the special triangle. And remember, it's the special triangle with pi on 4. So like this, there's 1, 1, the square root of 2. This right here is pi on 4. And I'm dealing with cos, so adjacent over hypotenuse. So that means I'm going to have 1 on the square root of 2. And remember, that's the same thing as the square root of 2 on 2. Both of those are the same thing. Then, after you did that, then you'd have to say, I'm in my third quadrant. And in my third quadrant, it's going to be negative. Or you could do it all in the one shot if you're feeling up to it. Once you're here, what you would then say is that this 2 will cancel with this 2. And the negatives will also cancel as well, which means I'm going to be left with the square root of 2 plus 1 as my answer, just like that. Let's put a box around our answer. Let's now move on to our next one. But before we do that, let's just look at our mark scheme. It's worth 2 marks, so 1 for the answer, then 1 for some working out up here. All right, the period. So this is just a 1 mark. We have to identify what the period is going to be. If we come up here and look, as you can see, the coefficient of my x is 3. So that means when I'm finding the period, I'm going to go 2 pi on 3. And I can't simplify that anymore, so that's my answer. Next, we have to find the amplitude. So remember, to find the amplitude, you look at what's in front. So I've got negative 2 there, but remember, you're going to take the absolute value of that, which means my answer is just going to be 2. Perfect. Let's now come to the last part, which says, the coordinates of the maximum turning point with the smallest x value. This question right here really requires some thought, and I would really encourage you to not watch this straight away, but just spend some time thinking about it before you watch my solution here, and give yourself a chance to kind of think about what's going on. So I'm just going to stop for a second and encourage you to give this a go for yourself before you watch me do it. Okay, hopefully you've given it a go. And even if you weren't successful, just try to think through this issue. It's really helpful just to kind of visualize what's going on here. So if I was just to draw this, now I'm not going to draw it accurately because that's just way too complicated, but let's just say it looks something like this, right? It's looking something like that. Obviously that's not what it looks like, but with that in our mind, we can say the coordinates of the maximum turning point with the smallest x value. The reason why I started here is because I know that my domain is between 0 and 2 pi. So if I'm starting at 0, that means my smallest x value, which is going to give me a maximum turning point, is going to be up here because it's a maximum, so it's the big one. That's the big turning point. So I'm trying to find where I first get that. How can I do that? Well, there's a couple things I know about this graph that is going to help me figure this out. If I was to come up here for a second and just, actually, let me just write down what the graph is again. Let me just bring this up. The graph that I'm dealing with is f of x is equal to negative 2 cos of 3x plus pi on 2 plus 1. If I was to give this a bit of a better sketch, I'm here, I'm here. I know that I'm 1 up, so I'm centered around this 1. Then I'm going up 2, which is going to bring me up here. Then I'm going down 2, which is going to bring me here. And as I said, you know, I don't know exactly what this graph is looking like because it's got that shift to it. But let's just say it looks something like what I drew before. I don't want to draw it too badly. Let's just say it looks something like that. As you can clearly see, the maximum is going to occur at 3. Again, this is not what it actually looks like because I've got this shift. I don't want to waste my time trying to figure out what it's going to look like. But I definitely know that I'm going to get a maximum turning point at 3 because I know that I'm shifted 1 up and then my amplitude is 2. So that's bringing me up here. So I need to find what this x value is. So that's the smallest x value, which is giving me my maximum turning point. So I dare say that if you're not able to visualize something like this in your head, it's going to be very challenging for you to answer it. Okay, so having done that, what are we going to do? So one thing that we should be very grateful for is that we've figured out what the maximum value of f of x is going to be. We did that by saying, hey, it's going to be 2 plus 1, which is equal to 3. Having now done that, we can then say, well, to find what the x is going to be, it's simply like solving a trigonometric equation, is it not? So we're just going to say solve when negative 2 cos 3x plus pi on 2 plus 1 is equal to 3. That's what we're doing. If you're able to understand this right here, then you're more than halfway through this question. Getting this is the tricky part. Realizing, hey, what's the maximum turning point? And for the smallest x value, kind of understanding what the question is asking, that's the hard part. Once you've gotten to this, it's just smooth sailing. So this is just kind of, we know what to do here. We're going to rearrange first off. 2 cos 3x plus pi on 2. I'm going to minus 1 to both sides, so this is going to give me 2. Then I'm going to divide by negative 2 to both sides. 3x plus pi on 2 is going to be negative 1. Then, remember, when we're solving trigonometric equations, look at all this junk in here. Let's just say let theta equal all this junk. So it's going to be cos of theta is equal to negative 1. Well, what's that? Cos of what angle gives me negative 1 out? I know what that's going to be. It's going to be pi. Think about your unit circle for a moment. I know that when I'm over here at pi, this right here is going to be negative 1, 0. Cos is after my x is going to be negative 1. So that means my angle is going to be pi. Now, I don't have to keep on adding, different solutions here because I'm after the smallest x value. So I'm just going to leave it at pi. And then what I'm going to do is say, I know that theta is equal to 3x plus pi on 2, which is equal to pi. Then I'm just going to solve for x. So 3x is equal to pi on 2, because I'm just minusing pi on 2 to both sides. Pi minus pi on 2 is pi on 2. And now it's just going to be x is equal to pi on 6. And that's my answer. So after all of that kind of craziness, that's going to be my answer. Now it's really important that we come back to the very start and we read it carefully. See how I've read this question? I've read it quite messily. I just kind of went through it and I didn't highlight the key terms. Look at this. What is something that I need to make sure my answer has? It says the coordinates. My goodness, why didn't I highlight that at the very beginning? Please highlight that right now. We need the coordinates of the maximum turning point with the smallest x value. This is such a painful question because if you don't provide your final answer as a coordinate, I can guarantee you, you're losing 1 full mark. So coordinates. So with that in mind, let's come down here. My final answer is going to be, therefore, pi on 6, 3. That is my final answer, pi on 6, 3. Make sure that you are reading the question carefully. Make sure that you're looking at those key words. It wants the coordinates. So many people will not have put coordinates and will lose marks because of it. And it's because of a sloppy way of reading the question. And the way that we read that at the very beginning was sloppy. We didn't stop and highlight that keyword, coordinates. Okay, that's all I have to say. hopefully you found this useful. The last question was a little tricky, but hopefully you were able to give it a good go and just come away with a better understanding of what's going on there. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I'll see you in the next one.